Everyone, Tim the Drop Man, back with another episode of Brews and Beers. And today what we're going to do specifically is we're going to talk about what is an IPA. So you've heard me review IPAs and talk about the different types of IPAs, but what is actually an IPA? Well, today I'm going to tell you. An IPA is actually called an India Pale Ale. So it is a type of pale ale. And the reason why it's called an India Pale Ale is really cool, actually. So it was developed back in the mid-1800s, and at that time, Britain, or England at the time, was in rule over India. They had to supply the people in India with beer from England. And what they found was, if they put more hops into the beer, that it would make it last longer, it would preserve the beer. So what they did was, they put lots of hops in the beer that they were sending from England to India. And what this did was, it preserved it, but it also gave it different characteristics. It gave it more of that piney, prominent hop aroma, and that real piney taste. So that's kind of how the whole IPA developed, and as you may have guessed, it's called an India Pale Ale because it was beer that was sent from England to India. And that's how the India Pale Ale name became and how it stuck. So typically with an IPA, it has a higher alcohol by volume, right? So you know, when you get a normal lager or normal pale ale, you know, you're probably somewhere in between that, anywhere from 3 to 5 ABV range. But with the IPAs, it goes up, and it's because of the hops, the extra hops that they put into it. And so what you do is you get that higher alcohol by volume, and then that higher bitterness as well. So the IBUs that you've been hearing me talk about can range anywhere from typically 30 to 70, all right, for an IPA. And the bitterness is caused by the extra hops, right? As you can imagine, hops are everything in this. So low malt, extra hops. So is that it with IPAs? Well, not quite. You've also heard me talk about a couple of different variants of IPAs. Now there are a lot of different variants of IPAs, but I'm going to hit the high notes right on these. So basically what you're going to look at is, you know, you're going to look at an American IPA, which is a West Coast IPA, they'll also call it. So it's, you know, 40 to 70 IBUs, very low malt, and it's kind of your typical IPA, right? It's got piney notes, you know, really hoppy and piney aroma, and just a really good drinking IPA. What you'll also see is you'll see a New England IPA. And a New England IPA is where you get those juicy IPAs, the things that, you know, they'll call it a hazy IPA because of the juice and the way they brew it. It's very cloudy. So a hazy IPA, a New England IPA, that very juicy tasting IPA. So you've also heard me talk about Imperial IPAs. Well, what is an Imperial IPA? Well, an Imperial IPA is also known as a double IPA, right? So extra alcohol by volume, typically 7.5% ABV or higher. And then they become more bitter as well, typically during that process. There's also what's called a triple IPA. So yeah, really powerful, right? And that's typically something that's, you know, 10% or over. So highlights: IPA, India Pale Ale. Again, a pale ale that's brewed with more hops, less malt, and they got the name India because it was shipped from England to India. And what's prominent in an IPA typically is the hoppy flavor, the pine flavor, and the bitterness. And some of that bitterness goes away when you get into the New England IPA or the juicy IPA. So Tim the Drop Man, and remember what my father always said, I'll drink any given beer.